Thanks again to our returning panel for one last discussion. Public safety and gun control are at the top of the governor's priorities going into this year's session. How do Democrats and Republicans differ in their approach to these issues? And are there places where they see eye to eye? Jessica.
That there are places where we see eye to eye among the parties. I don't think anybody wants to see gun violence perpetrated on children anywhere in the state. I think kudos to the governor who noted that in her speech that responsible gun owners are, a good thing to have, but the target of much of this legislation is for those who are not responsible gun owners. And while it might be, politically savvy on her part to use buzzwords like assault rifles and assault weapons, smart, strategic gun safety laws are, keep New Mexicans safe in the long run.
Of the nearly 40 crime-related bills introduced last year, only about 10 made it through the Roundhouse. And some of those defeated proposals are back again this year. But the session is short, right? So how do you, Tripp, I'm coming to you on this, how do you expect Democrats in the House and Senate will prioritize the bills they want to send to the governor? Which of these ideas has the best chance of success? If it's not an assault weapons ban, is it the waiting period? What do you think?
Let me say this too. I want to throw in, this is also an election year. So we need to keep this in mind that, a lot of this is rhetorical, and there's going to be a lot of jockeying and positioning, and people will be taking votes depending on, the issue. I want to say that the assault rifle ban, that's going to generate a lot of heat. So I wouldn't imagine that that's going to be easiest. The 14-day waiting period, I think there'll be, as happens in the legislature or any place where you have negotiations, the governor probably started at the high end, 14 days, and is probably going to negotiate down, I would imagine. That's how
we're going to hear a lot about the potential for these waiting periods to stop mass shootings, right?
Yeah. And at the same time, what I'm saying is basically she probably started on the high end, 14, and probably her what she wants is 7 days or something like this. There's a negotiation that's going to happen, I think. And I think that makes it maybe a little more viable than a ban. That's just me.
Who knows? When discussing firearm laws, is this the one topic that draws dissension among Democrats? I think we have seen that. But what power or leverage do Republicans have through the budgeting process when it comes to gun control? Where are they going to exercise that, Jessica?
So can I pass that question off to Tripp? I think he might have a stronger
go ahead.
So when you say what leverage they have, I mean, I think, again, returning to like the numbers, there's 45 and 25 in the House and 27-15 in the Senate. What I think you're going to have is Republicans are going to go to some of these folks who are in maybe, suburban Democrats, maybe rural Democrats, and say, hey, this is an election year, presidential election year. People are going to be turning out in droves.
And nobody wants to be on a campaign mailer about this. One of the governor's proposals wants to raise the age for buying certain types of guns. And in Albuquerque, that might be a really easy sell, but you're getting someone in Farmington who's like, why?
I think the GOP is able to leverage, some of these Democrats,
some of their rural compatriots,
and people who grew up in, as Jessica was mentioning, hunting culture, right? There's the hunting culture, or just people in rural areas for whom guns are just a way of life. Those are Democrats too, in some ways.
That's right.
I'm going to weigh in briefly and just say that I think when you're talking about the Republican response, they're going to point to what's happening right now, which is red flag laws that are not being enforced. You're talking about data from our communities that shows that laws to keep guns out of the hands of violent criminals do not work, and they are often repeat offenders and come back to their weapon of choice. So if Republicans are leveraging something to get this into a conversation at the State House, it's going to be what's happening in New Mexico.
And there's
right.
some data to support them there too. Shifting gears to education, teachers' unions from Albuquerque and Santa Fe spoke out last year against the state's decision to expand the school year to 180 days, as have rural communities where we're talking about school buses running fewer days a week. They said this would scare teachers away and it would complicate existing 4-day school weeks. So, what are lawmakers doing this year to address those concerns from teachers and school administrators?
I mean, the governor's going to push for the 180 days. I mean, that was in her speech. And so you're going to see that the party in control there's going to be an internal debate among Democrats who are like, hey, I think we should do this. And I want to throw in this too. We had a pandemic which altered school attendance. There's a great attendance depletion happened.
You're right.
After.
There's a huge problem with attendance. You can require them. This is what some of the teachers are saying. You can require them to go, but are they going to show up?
I mean, this is a national story, not just New Mexico. It's just, but yes, it's going to be a really interesting debate to watch.
Jessica, there's a tension with teachers who say, we are doing the hardest dang job out there. And if you push us one more time, we're going to quit.
So I had a conversation with a teacher who's from my hometown school district, the Loving School District. They're on a 4-day school week right now. And that's exactly what she said. Look, we are doing our best. We're understaffed, we're under-resourced, we're underpaid. Can we focus on issues that are a little more pertinent right now than expanding the school day when we're just now getting our feet under us post-pandemic? And I think if you talk to parents too, they'll probably have more questions as well. What do we do with our children? How do we support their educational learning at home more instead of, messing with the schedule that most of them have been in for years now?
Can I add some stuff?
You know what, Tripp? I want to keep us moving here because the governor is doubling down on the state's structured literacy program. She wants $30 million to create a statewide literacy institute, as well as $30 million for a free literacy summer program that would serve 10,000 students. Would these two new initiatives stretch an already thin education workforce even thinner? Or do people think that this is going to help teachers and students and it's worth pushing for?
I think being around the roundhouse, and the debates, I think everybody agrees that it's not one thing, not silver bullet. There's a lot of different things. And I think this is one of those ideas that's among the many things that one can, push for. I want to say, as far as stretching the workforce, people paying attention to education here in New Mexico and across the state is you've got looming retirements. I mean, by which I mean there are a lot of teachers who are nearing the retirement age who are like, do I need more of this? Do I need more of the hassle? Maybe I'll retire. Do we have enough teachers to actually fill those positions? As far as parents and structured literacy and all this kind of stuff, we also have to ask questions around childcare. By which I mean, is there going to be affordable childcare if they are working and their kids? There's all sorts of questions around this stuff.
One complaint that we've heard from the teachers on this is that nobody's asking them whether they want to do this, right? So this is a tension. Again, it is an election year, Tripp, right? Everyone is when they're thinking about making these decisions, they're picturing their own faces on a campaign ad in their town or on a mailer that's going into mailboxes saying they did or didn't do a thing, right? Now, why might it be the case that there is such a disconnect between what the governor is saying she wants to do and state lawmakers who are like, I don't know, I haven't talked to her, and state lawmakers and teachers who are like, why doesn't anybody ask us these questions? Why is there this disconnect?
I had noticed she called out on several people who were sitting in the gallery in the audience, and when she was, highlighting this portion of her work. And there were teachers. There was a math teacher from Las Cruces, a school public district, and they were all presumably smiling and nodding their heads in agreement with this program. But that's one person among, thousands of teachers in the state. So I do think that you're right in saying there's probably a disconnect. I think that we understand the political pressure of moving us from very bottom of the list as the state to very top of the list, which is a huge goal. But I also think that maybe in their minds they are saying we need to set the goals, we need to set the standards, and then scoop everyone into that. There is value in having conversations with teachers. Obviously, they're the ones on the ground, they're the ones doing the work. But if you don't set a North Star, then how are you ever going to reach it?
Tripp, you know, it's tempting in an election year, if you put yourself in the shoes of a politician, it's tempting to pick off things, sexy sounding projects, things you think you can accomplish really quickly, setting up a new thing, as opposed to, you know, for years we've been talking about investing more in early childhood education. Now it's happening, but that we're not seeing that hit graduation rates yet. You know, it's going to be a long time before that.
You know, when you are up at the Roundhouse or you're around committee meetings, you know, around the state, around education, the people who are monitoring this, they're talking about a couple of generations. I mean, making all these investments, it takes a long time for these kind of investments to really, you see the outcomes, a generation or two out later. So when I'm up at the Roundhouse, you know, it's I think as a reporter, it sometimes might be tempting to really get, oh, there's a shiny bauble, let's go cover that, or let's do this. The real work is like, I mean, the hard work is the hard slog that we're talking about, which is, you know, the wonkiness, the stuff that frankly makes people like their eyes glaze over it. That stuff is important.
But it's a balance too. It's like, what can we do that's going to make a difference right now? What little things can we change today? And 180 school year is one of those quick things that people are hoping could make a difference right away. And then investing in early childhood is more of the big picture. Jessica, do you have any last thoughts?
I do actually. So I'm not up at the Roundhouse, but I am in the school board meetings where you hear teachers and parents and, you know, members of these communities. And I think the pervasive idea there is that we appreciate the input, we appreciate the money, but our school districts are the purview of local school boards. So
and
please
we're going to
step
hear
away,
a lot about
the lid.
Yeah, we're going to hear a lot about that tension between local control, which I know Republicans are pushing for. So for one last time, I'd like to thank you, panelists. We so appreciate your expertise and this discussion, and we wish you luck on your continued coverage of this year's legislative session.